Howdy, writers. Welcome back to Ride Between the Wines. On this episode, it's part 2 of my Charleston Food and Wine series before the world went crazy. I want to start by saying that if you've been watching these videos, I've been trying to figure out why they looked so high quality on my phone and computer and then so crummy on YouTube, and that's because I have no idea what I'm doing. But I think I've got it fixed, so this episode should be bright and crisp and clear, and I'm going to slowly go back to the past episodes and try to touch this up as well. But welcome back to Ride Between the Wines. This episode, I have Bob Pepi from Eponymous Wines, as well as just a whole slew of other wineries and a long career and history in the California wine scene. So very exciting to have him sit down with me for a few minutes. So if you're ready, buckle up. Let's ride.
The world we live in is an amazing one, full of passion, wonderment, and of course, fine wine. This is the story of one man's journey to fully understand and appreciate that world. So kick the tires and light the fires. It's time to ride between the wines.
It's Burgundian in style.
Just a whisper of cherry.
Very nice legs.
This is so perfectly balanced.
Such an old world style.
Is this laced with tobacco?
A total fruit bomb.
I say, Sir Ponce!
But anyways, so welcome back to Ride Between the Wines. This is week 2 of being at the Charleston Food and Wine Festival. And my winemaker today is Bob Pepi. Hey Bob, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the
Nice
show.
to be here.
You probably recognize the name Pepi, but Bob has been a huge part of the California wine scene for years, and we're going to talk about that.
All right.
So I'm just going to let it rip. Tell me, who are you?
Actually, Bob Pepi. I'm a winemaker. I've been making wine in California I just had my 40th harvest. So started in 1980. I was born in San Francisco and was going up to Napa, at 65 when my dad purchased 70 acres up there. And it was just something he wanted to retire to 20 years down the road. He wanted a place in the country. I happened to have 14 acres of vineyards and he planted another 40. But no thought of having a winery. And I was working for my dad and my uncle in the family in the business they took over from my grandfather, and they decided to sell that in the late 70s. And my father and I got this crazy idea, why don't we start a winery? We know what we're doing in the vineyards, but didn't have a clue as far as winemaking. But I was lucky to run across an old college friend of mine that as soon as he left college, he went up to the Napa Valley and was starting to garner quite a reputation as a winemaker. I still think he's one of the best winemakers in the United States, Tony Soter. So he was my mentor. A2 Pinot Noir.
Right.
Now he's got a winery up in Oregon, Soter.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky to be mentored by Tony.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then, so you and your father, how long did your father?
We started the winery, first vintage was 81.
Okay.
Dad bought the property in 65, and in 65 you have property in Napa Valley. You didn't check out the soils before you bought it or whatever. We happened to have land in the heart of Oakville, which is good Cabernet country. Unfortunately, we had some of the shittiest soils in Napa Valley as far as Cabernet. But we soon found out that we could do a very good job with Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay.
So we specialized in Sauvignon Blanc. That was 70 or 80% of our production. We made a wonderful Cabernet, but it was purchased from a vineyard right next to Martha's vineyard, a little ways down the highway. So Sauvignon Blanc, I was the queen of Sauvignon Blanc. You can't be a king of a delicate white. Proximity to San Francisco, it all worked. So, so I was known for that. And one thing led to another. Dad was a great partner. He let me do whatever I wanted as long as I told him what I was up to. He was a better dad. But we had some differences in what I was doing in my private life. So I walked away from my interest in the early 90s, and Dad didn't want to run it. He sold it shortly thereafter. I worked for another wine company for a few years, but then I decided, when you can't find gainful employment, you hang on a consulting shingle, and I became a consulting winemaker, and that's what I've been doing for 25 years. And it's, being a winemaker, it's great having your own winery. The experience was terrific, but as a consultant, I'm making 50 to 100 times more wines than I was in one little winery.
I'm sure.
I'm working with vineyards, all over Northern California. I worked with a winery in Argentina for 20 years. The one downside with being a winemaker, we're not the sharpest sticks in the box necessarily, and then your learning curve is slowed by the fact you only get one shot a year. 80% of your learning is happening during harvest and fermentation. Whereas guys making beer, they can make 5 batches in a week. So you screw one up, you get to start over. You don't get that chance in wine.
Right.
And so when I started consulting, I said, what would be kind of cool is to work in the Southern Hemisphere, harvest down there, because they're 6 months opposite ours. So I was able to work down there during harvest in the slow time in California, and then take a couple trips down there the other times of the year to do some blends and whatever. So that's been a lot of fun. That stopped about 4 years ago, but I just picked up a client that you're selling here in South Carolina, in other parts of the United States, also Terrapura.
Yeah.
And so I've been working with them in the blends and getting into the vineyards to see what they're
If
doing.
you want to check a podcast, I'll probably put a link right here. But Diego Benavente actually did a audio podcast with us. I think it had a funny pun name to it. It's not cold, it's a little Chile. I don't even know what it said. Something like that.
Yes.
But yeah, check out Diego's link too, because he talks a lot about Terrapura. But tell me more about Terrapura and what you're doing there.
I think what they wanted was they wanted to make the wines a bit more approachable for the export markets, not just the United States, but the UK. And that's why they've got me down there. They've got a strong winemaking team, which Diego is a part. But I think the wines were a little too stringent, maybe not. And I'm not trying to make California wines in Chile.
Right.
That's the last thing I want to do. I want the wines to speak in the soils. And for me, what's exciting, we're with the Terrapura line. We don't own the vineyards, but we're working closely with growers that we're buying grapes from. Growers that have vineyards in over a 350 kilometer range from north to south, from the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, to the Andes, 800 meters up in the Andes. So, I got all these wines to make blends with from all these different parts of Chile. It's like a kid in a candy store.
Sure.
So that's been a lot very exciting.
Plus, I imagine you're working with a lot of varietals you don't work with in America.
I work with, I work with a little bit of Pinot in the United States, in California, Anderson Valley. But the Pinots, and I think that's going to be one of the nicest varieties coming out of Chile. And they're just starting to figure out where they want to plant it and what to do with it. We're making, even at the $12, $13 retail price range, we're making some offering. We're making Pinot Noir that you can actually tell the varietal character of it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, there's Pinot Noir from there that is, for the price, you just don't find good Pinot Noir.
Right.
And absolutely true.
So that's been exciting. Working with Carmenere, the first blends I was in with the winemaking team, we went through the Sauvignon Blanc, the Chardonnay, the Pinot, and we come up to the Carmenere, and I said, well, before we start with the blends, you guys have to tell me what is it supposed to smell like? What is it supposed to taste like? So once I got that down, that was wonderful wines. I'm having a lot of fun.
Well, can we talk about some of your other wineries that you're working with?
Sure. I've made wines with Whitehall Lane in the past. I was working with them for 10 years with Flora Springs, Rutherford Grove.
Fantastic, yeah.
One of the things we started at Pepi, we were one of the first. We were actually the cover, my father and I, of the New York Times Sunday magazine when we released our first Sangiovese. We wanted to make a wine from the area of Italy where both my folks were from, and so we were the first with the new age of. We beat Atlas Peak out with the first back in the early '90s, so that was a lot of fun. And I've done some Sangiovese. I've worked with Flora Springs, with Andretti, so that's been kind of a fun thing. But right now, I'm making some wines for the owner of a marketing company, Quintessential, Two Angels Wines. I've been doing that for close to 20 years now, making a Petite Syrah from Lake County and a Sauvignon Blanc. To me, Lake County is like the bastard cousin of Napa and Sonoma. It doesn't get quite the reputation, but I think Lake County makes some of the Sauvignon Blanc, Rhone varieties, Zinfandel, as well as anybody in California. So that's been a fun project for me.
Tell me, because you told me a little bit about this last night at the tasting, but what's High Valley? That's where your Sauv Blanc is appellated.
It's one of the newer appellations in Lake County, and it has nothing to do with the pot grown in Mendocino County, but more the elevation of the vineyards. And there was a lot of that.
They should have stuck with that.
Yes, whether it's coming back. But no, High Valley is on the northeast side of Clear Lake. Clear Lake itself is the biggest natural lake in California. 700 feet elevation at the lake, and where these grapes are coming from High Valley, I think it has to be at least 1,400 feet elevation, and where we're getting the Sauvignon Blanc is 2,000 feet elevation, which is one of the higher vineyards in north coast of California, hence High Valley on the northeast side of the lake. So we're also, and we were getting the Petit Syrah there, but now we're getting it from Red Hills, which is on the other side of the lake, and really a nice spot for Petit Syrah. Red soils, volcanic soils. If you go there in the right part of the day, it looks like the soils are just glass reflecting the light, but what it is obsidian, which is volcanic, that's been broken up by the tractors. And if you look around the vineyard, you'll see boulders that are 2 to 3 feet in diameter of obsidian.
Huge blocks of obsidian.
It's crazy. So that's it's kind of a cool vineyard.
So do you only make 2 varietals?
With two angles.
With 2 angles, right. So it's a very interesting 2 varietals to pick.
Well,
mostly just a very interesting one red.
The owners wanted to make a case Syrah, some kind of a blend of Syrah and Petit Syrah. We couldn't find anything we really liked, except we found this wine that was made from Petit Syrah that was made from a vineyard in High Valley. And so we talked to the vineyard owner, and he has a big vineyard, and that's where we started getting the Petit. And then we saw that he's got some Sauvignon Blanc growing, so the next year, combined with my affinity to Sauvignon Blanc, they wanted, why don't we make a Sauvignon Blanc also? So those are 2. We made some Cabernet from the My Camus range for a few years until we lost the lease on that vineyard. So right now we're concentrating on the Petit Syrah, Sauvignon Blanc.
I mean, I think it's cool. It's a cool only
right.
2 to make.
Right.
So, can we talk about Negociant?
We can talk about it. So Negociant, I started my own label in 2000 with a Napa Cabernet called Eponymous, but we started making Negociant under the Eponymous umbrella I've been wanting to make a Pinot Noir for a long time, but I think I needed to find the right vineyard, and we finally stumbled across a vineyard in Anderson Valley in 2010 that I knew would give us the fruit I wanted, and then we changed to another vineyard even closer to the ocean in Anderson Valley. So one of the coolest parts of Anderson Valley in 13, so we've been working with that vineyard since then. The style of Pinot Noir I wanted to make was either going to come from Sonoma Coast or Anderson Valley, which are 2 of the coolest areas in California. They're making some wonderful Pinots in the Central Coast, but the style I wanted was not going to come from there. Mm-hmm. It's more of a Burgundian style, some leaner character, but nice earthiness to it, and some bright fruit. And so that's been a real one of the 3 wines we're making at the Eponymous umbrella.
Well, how many vintages have been released in Negociant?
We've released, we're on the 14 vintage now, so we like to hold them back a little bit. I think Pinot Noir, it's a nice wine when it's released young, 2 or 3 years, but I think if you leave it for 4 or 5 years, it really shines. So
that's great.
Yeah.
So the first time I met you, which is maybe a couple years ago, you introduced me to the word eponymous,
right? And
I had never heard it before. And you know what is funny is I see it very frequently. I don't know if you started it or if I've just never noticed it, but why eponymous? What does eponymous mean? What?
Well, I didn't know what the word meant, and I never saw it before. Now I see it everywhere: the eponymous winery, the eponymous restaurant, the eponymous album, whatever. I bottled my first vintage, a 2000 vintage in Napa Cabernet, without labels. We call them shiners, and I didn't know what I was going to call it. And I was home one night, and I was listening to my daughter, who was in college at the time, talking to my wife about this word, and I'm thinking, I think I can use that. So, if you're as ignorant as I am, eponymous means something named after someone or something. So, the Robert Mondavi winery is the eponymous winery of Robert Mondavi. Jack's Bar is the eponymous bar of some guy named Jack.
Right. My
fanciful definition, this is all on the back label, is that it's a wine made by a winemaker that cannot use his own name on his own bottle of wine. So it's play on words. There's a little shadowy figure on the label which represents me walking away from my name. And actually I like having, so when we sold the family winery, it was Robert Pepi Winery. and we didn't have a non-compete, but we sold the brand. So we sold our name. So I'm enjoying having Eponymous, or Eponymus, as some people pronounce it, on wine from Eponymus, on the label, rather than having my.
Well, you've just come up with the name for the title for this podcast. Thank you. That's great. Wait, so is your name on the back of it? Does it say?
I have a signature on the back label, but it's very, very small.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we didn't really get into that. I was wondering that. Huh.
So it's and the only reason for the Eponymous and Negociant labels is I don't need to have my own label again. I've done that. But every once in a while I stumble across a vineyard that I really want to make. I know it's going to make some great wine, and that's what the beginning of it. And it was only supposed to be one wine, the Cabernet. My neighbor's vineyard, I was coveting my neighbor's vineyard rather than his wife. It was probably a safer thing. But I knew that it would make, this vineyard is very rocky on the benchlands of Atlas Peak in Napa. I knew it would make some great cab, and when the vineyard became available, I locked it up. And since then, I was doing just one wine for 8 years. I started making some grapes off of Mount Veeder, but on the Sonoma side, for about 10 years before I lost it. It was a leased vineyard, but they sold it. So right now, it's just the Napa Cab. We make a proprietary white from Carneros, the Sonoma area. Mostly Pinot Blanc with about 20% Riesling, co-fermented, Surly's aged, and just a beautiful little vineyard. And then that Negociant Pinot.
Well, why co-fermented?
Co-fermenting is something that used to be something that people, especially some of the old plantings where there were field blends, or they're sort of co-fermented. Ideally, if you're going to make a blend of more than one variety, you're going to make it more unified, or the flavors are going to be more married if you ferment the grapes together. The downside is you rarely ripen the grapes you want to blend together.
That's why I wanted to ask how that works.
So it rarely happens that you can pick the varieties that are close to both being ripe at the same time. It just so happens that both these varieties are planted in a vineyard in Carneros, and in that vineyard they're ripening at the same time, the Pinot Blanc and the Riesling. And so you can co-ferment, and I think it makes just a lovely wine. Stainless steel fermented, but toward the end of fermentation, we rack it into stainless steel drums, 75-gallon drums, into Surly's aging. And if you haven't heard the term, it's basically aging on autolyzed yeast cells that look like Dijon mustard at the bottom of your barrel, and you stir that lees, and what it does is it gives the wine a nice creamier mouthfeel without affecting the fruit character at all. Which is why we're doing a stainless steel drum, even in a neutral barrel. And that's kind of which is a used barrel. It's kind of a misnomer because you're still muting the fruit with the character of the oak, even if there's no oak character left. Just fine with the buildup of bacteria and yeast in the barrel. So with stainless steel drums, you keep it nice and clean, and you're still able to stir the yeast. Probably way too much more than you need to know about Surly's aging.
I have a definition point in the podcast where I had a local restaurateur come and define something for me, and I think I'm just going to steal this part for my Surly's aging definition in a future episode. So I guess the big question I want to ask is, what's next for Eponymous, and how long till we get the Eponymous Sangiovese?
It's very not having my own vineyards. I can't just plant Sangiovese, and I know. And I've worked with Sangiovese from a couple of vineyards in Napa Valley. The problem I think we're seeing in California now is everybody wants to plant Cabernet as a grower because it's more profitable for us. So there's less and less Sangiovese. But one of these days, fortunately, I've got some clients that still deal with Sangiovese, and so that's been a lot of fun for me.
Is there so in your consulting, has it taken you back to Italy? Or
no.
Would you like to at some point?
I'd love to make wine in Italy or Spain or France. The downside is they make their harvest at the same time as ours.
Yeah, same.
So I'm kind of stuck in California. That's why I've got to be content to make wine in Argentina and Chile, and I'm having a lot of fun down there. It's the winemaking in South America is as old as it is in California, still a lot younger than Europe, but I think the wines they've been making in South America haven't been the style that are approachable enough for the export market. So there's been a lot of change just in the last 20 years I've seen down there, or 25 years. So that's been exciting, and trying to find the best places for each variety. So that continues to be my. I making the wines in California, but I'm really enjoying Chile. Chile is very similar to California for the north coast of California, and then all the weather's coming off the Pacific. And the mountain ranges are similar, although a little bit taller than we have in California, the Andes. So there's some similarities, but the fact that there's just so many different terroirs and climatic areas in this small area.
How's Chile doing with Chardonnay?
I think Chile's got some, because they're doing such a good job with Pinot, you might think they should be able to do a nice job with Chardonnay. I love the Chardonnays down there. They're different than, I think California's tending more to that direction, but they're just so nice and crisp and lean. It's more like a nice Chablis in France. So I think you're finding some pretty nice Chardonnays down there also.
Well, I'll have to check some of those out. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. You know what? I usually cut in the center for a segment, but I just started talking to you and enjoyed all this. So I'll probably put something in later for a cut. But can you tell me, in your history, any like amazing fun stories, or is there your worst vintage or anything like that?
We're pretty lucky in California that our vintages are fairly. There's vintage variation, but we're lucky because just the weather patterns. We typically do not get any rain between April and October. So, good story about Sangiovese. So my father and I were the first to plant the Sangiovese and first to release it. And after we sold the winery, the wine company that bought it from us was being sued by a big Italian company, saying that the name on Sangiovese, they had it first, and they had to stop using it.
The actual word Sangiovese?
No, what it was what we named our Sangiovese
Okay.
Colline di Sassi, which means a little hill of stone. And this big wine company, Banfi, had a wine called Colo di Sasso. Mm-hmm. So I was subpoenaed to, when you give a testimony under oath, to say that this is when we released the wine, we were out before them, and then they tried to say that we weren't in broad enough distribution. I showed them that we were, even though it was 250 cases. So they sent me back to Nassau County in New York to testify in front of a judge, and I was quickly, my testimony was quickly felt it was the second question that the lawyer from the other wine company asked me was, "Well, Mr. Pepi, is it true that you smuggled a suitcase clone of Sangiovese into the country?" So my credibility now, and I'm under oath, and I said, "Well, no, we're not really. We actually smuggled it in a barrel." And so that was the end. That was the end of that testimony. We won the court case, but it didn't help my.
But no help to you.
Didn't help my credibility.
Well, that's nice. Well, yeah. I honestly, thanks so much for sitting down with me.
No,
this is exciting. If you've never tried any of these wines, I'm gonna link in the podcast notes where you can get them in Colombia or in a market near you. But great stuff.
Yeah.
I actually want to have some of the white right now. That sounds, after listening to you talk about it, the Eponymous white. That sounds awesome. I don't know that I've had that. But anyways, thanks so much, and have a good time at Charleston Food and Wine.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay.
Well, there you have it. Another episode down. Thank you, Bob Pepi, for your time and for your amazing wines. Please try Eponymous, Negociant, Terrapura, Two Angels. It should be in most bottle shops. If they aren't, please ask about them. And next week, we have Nicola Lynchie, which is the very last recording that I did in my car before I no longer was allowed to have people in my car. But he is the winemaker and the owner for Fattoria Maliano. So very exciting, fun guy to have in the car with me. So look forward to that. Please like, share, follow, write good reviews, tell your friends about this podcast. I'm having a lot of fun. After next week's episode, I'm going to try to zoom in with some winemakers until the world comes back to normal. But until then, chin chin.
Cheers!